Hi guys, this is Nadia from Bali Crafts, and today I want to show you how to create a soldered rustic Viking ring. If you like my tutorials, consider subscribing because I upload new stuff all the time. Also, if you're interested in some PDF tutorials, I've got loads in my Etsy shop, as well as some downloadable ready-made frames for some of the tutorials I put on here. And don't forget, obviously, about our wire wrap and jewelry artists worldwide group on Facebook. Right, let's get started. So we're going to cut our length of wire, and we're going to use our drill and a chuck to twist these three wires together to start with. Now I like to use a good length of wire so I can get several rings or bracelets out of one length of wire, which saves you time when doing this. So make sure that the wires are all nice and straight and clamped down with a pair of pliers, and that makes the twist easy. It's very important that the twist is as even as possible, which will be the final symmetry will be much better if you do this. So now we're twisting, and keep going until you've got quite a fine sort of twist. So that's enough, and this is what it looks like. You can see it's nice and even, which will make the final result much more even and symmetrical. So next we need to anneal, because obviously we need to twist it some more, and it's much easier to anneal, to twist the wire if the wire is soft, and you do this by heating up the wires with your torch. I'm using an Aroda torch here, which is an industrial strength, so it goes up to about 1400 degrees, and it's much better than your sort of creme brulee, which doesn't get up to temperature. So it's worthwhile investing into. Costs about £50, so it's worthwhile investing. So heat up until red hot, and then obviously quench. So stick it in your bath here. This is just water at the moment. You can see a little unevenness there in one of the twists. So once you've done that, we are now going to work with this further. So we're going to fold it in half. So find the midpoint and fold in half. You can also do this with two different lengths of wire if you wish. So twist two wires rather than bending it if you want. So that's what it looks like. So once we've bent it, going to anneal it some more. Quench. And then we are going to trim off if you've got any length at the end, just to make sure that they fit into your chuck. So you need to open your chuck and your drill a little bit more and make sure they fit in. And when it's bent like that, the wires, I find it's easier to keep the two lengths straight, obviously, because the bend prevents them from being uneven. So quite like this process. So tighten your chuck, use a pair of pliers again. You can obviously do this manually as well, so you can maybe attach it to an object and then manually twist it if you don't have a drill. So just twist, and you will find that the wire work hardens very, very quickly when you do this. So you need to keep annealing in between, and then obviously quenching. That's what it looks like so far. And copper obviously oxidizes, so it's got fire scale and all of that as well, so it does get quite mucky if you want. So we're going to repeat and anneal. So we're going to do a twist. So I find obviously the more you twist, the tighter the sort of end result in the rings and the bracelets. So once again, hold the end and twist. And this is a nice tight weave. So I try not to buckle the wire. So when the wire work hardens and I've gone too far with the twisting, it tends to buckle. So try and avoid that. And obviously you want the twist to stay as straight as possible. So next you're going to need a forming block. So this one is a Durston one that I bought when I got my dappling set, which is great. It's got all the different sort of shapes in it. So you need to choose a triangular shape that's big enough to house the wire so that you don't squash the sides when hammering. So in other words, it needs to fit perfectly into the groove. Otherwise what happens is the wire gets caught between the hammer and the block, if that makes any sense, and it gets flattened out like an overspill almost. So you need to hammer until you have a nice triangular shape. It's very satisfying to do that, so lots of fun. So that's what it looks like so far. So next we need to cut, and I use my jeweler's saw for that, a little bit of wax to start off with, and then I am just going to place it onto my cutting area, and I'm going to try and make the cut as straight as I possibly can, so that when I would solder the two ends together, it's already as flush. Obviously we need to file down the ends, but it helps to try and keep the cut as 90 degrees as possible. So you just hold your saw nice and straight. Normally I would show this better, but for camera I'm going to go at an angle. So normally you pull your saw and you cut on the way down, and you try and hold the saw sort of upright at a 90-degree angle as you cut, which is easier. So and it prevents the blade from snapping as well. So you cut on the way down, so don't sort of seesaw up and down, if that makes any sense. There you go. So that's what the end looks like. Next, anneal it some more until it's red hot, and then obviously we're going to quench it. Next, need to decide on a ring size. If you don't have a ring stretcher, you can try and get the sizing right as good as possible beforehand. You can obviously form it a little bit later with a rawhide mallet, but I try and get the size right from the start if I can. So because we annealed the wire, I can now shape and try and keep the triangle, the sort of edge facing upwards. It has a tendency to want to twist, so take your time with that and kind of line up where you want how big you want the ring to be. So it looks like. So next, once again, we're going to cut. So use a bit of wax. This is just normal sort of jeweler's wax for the blade to prevent it from snapping. So once again, try and keep a 90-degree angle, so nice and straight. Remember to saw from perpendicular and then cut on your way down. That's it. So this is the two cut ends. Going to try and line them up as best as possible. So this is what the ring looks like so far. So now we need to file the ends to make them as flush as possible. Once we put the solder in, there must be no gap in between, or as little gap as possible, to ensure that the solder sticks. So file down any bits and pieces that may stick out and make sure it's flush. So far so good. So now we need to get rid of all of the fire scale, otherwise the solder won't stick. It needs to be free of all fire scale and oxidization, as well as any print. So what I use for this is a mixture of salt and vinegar and a bit of water if you want. I just don't bother with the water. I just put salt and vinegar in it, So just 1 teaspoon in about 250 ml, and then I heat it up in the microwave, which makes the whole thing a lot quicker. So that gets rid of all the oxidization and makes it nice and clean. And now we're going to adjust and make sure that the ends are flush. So next we're going to place our solder. This is a medium solder. You obviously need to flux your piece first, and then we're going to evenly heat the ring. So just make sure that you go around the ring and don't concentrate the flame only on the soldered area. So just make sure you heat everything evenly until the silver flows. You know that the solder has flown when you see a little silver flash. That means the silver has flown or flown. I can't remember how you call it. So clean it up a bit, obviously a little bit more than this. And this is what the solder looks like. So it's filled the gap quite nicely, and this is quite strong. So that's what it looks like. So next we're going to shape the ring. It's quite important that you don't use, a normal hammer, because the copper or even silver, if you're going to use that, is very soft at this stage, and you can very easily mark it. So you can either use a rawhide mallet, or I've got a nylon head hammer here, which is good enough for this purpose. So I'm just shaping the ring with that until I'm happy with the overall shape. Obviously flatten it as well until you're happy with the shape and size. And then I'm going to clean it one more time. So as I said earlier, if you heat it in the microwave, it goes much better and quicker. So next I'm going to get rid of all the fire scales and rough edges, and perhaps any of the marks that I have created while making this ring. So I'm using a Dremel with a fine sandpaper bit, and this will give you a nice sort of shiny surface area. So polishing for these rings, I think, is quite important. Obviously they will oxidize in time, but if you give it a nice smooth surface finish, it's much easier to repolish these rings in future. So I get them as smooth and shiny as I possibly can. And there are various mediums that you can use, polishing mediums as well, but as I said, I like to use my sandpaper. So this is what it looks like. You can also try and get rid of the silver as much as possible. So these are the pads I use. You can use normal sandpaper, which I had before. Don't really like using sandpaper that much anymore. This is quite a sort of grainy grit. It was down to 80, I believe. And this perishes really, really quickly. But I bought these pads. These are just sort of off-cut pads on eBay. And they work fantastic, and they last a long time. So if you look for those on eBay, you'll get various grits. And as I said, I've used the finest for a final polish, which is about a 2000. And yeah, that's that. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe for more tutorials, and pop by my Etsy shop for any other tutorials. Remember that we have an artist group which is called Wire Wrap and Jewelry Artists Worldwide. And lastly, don't forget to visit me on my Facebook, Instagram or TikTok page, all under Mbali Crafts. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.